Joining us now to discuss, former National Security Advisor to Mike Pence. He is retired Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg, along with Fox News contributor Liz Peek. Okay, let's start with this. A member of Ukraine's parliament, right in the middle of Kyiv, spoke to the Evening Edit, told us that, yes, Putin is deliberately bombing nuclear power plants as a substitute for weapons of mass destruction. Let's listen to this. Watch.
Do you and Ukrainians feel he's purposely bombing nuclear facilities?
Yes, I'm 100% sure in this, because you cannot, there is no way you can not know that this is the largest nuclear plant in Europe. And there is no way that you can accidentally bomb it. There is no way that you not know where the Chernobyl is, and because there is nothing else there. There is just the nuclear plant, and so he disconnected it from the power grid right now. And it's 48 hours until the cooling system will continue working, and then they will stop. We all know what happens when the cooling system in Chernobyl stops. We have seen this. This is the bigger threat than potential chemical attack or potential red button threat. And I don't know why NATO countries ignore it or say, we hope that this will not happen. If this happens, radiation doesn't care, who has which passport. And are you a member of NATO or not? Or are you in EU or not? This will be a world-class tragedy.
General, your reaction, General Kellogg?
Yeah, Liz, thanks for having me. Look, I don't think they're bombing the nuclear power plants, but they're doing a lot of other stuff but that. They've shut down their power because I think they're hurting deliberately the people who are living in those cities because they can't get power. But here's what they are doing.
Wait a second. Sorry, we're seeing. I know that, but national security officials, also this MP is saying yes, they are, and they've already. She's saying she also told us they bombed Chernobyl and they bombed another nuclear power plant besides Chernobyl.
Yeah.
Deliberately.
Yeah, Liz. Liz. There's a fog of war out there, and and I've always been very cautious, and I used to tell everybody I was associated with. Even in the White House, the first reports are always wrong. Look, he's done horrific things. He's done things that are right at their level of war crimes, from bombing hospitals, hitting civilian residential areas. But the power plants, I think he's deliberately trying to shut down, not necessarily bombing, but turning them off, to cut down the power, cut out the power to the inhabitants of the major cities. But look, here's what he's doing. He's deliberately escalating a pattern of terror, trying to terrorize citizens so they'll break. The Ukrainians aren't going to break. That's what the huge miscalculation by Vladimir Putin.
If he's aiming bombs right at nuclear power plants, it's not like he's trying to miss or just shut it down. These are nuclear reactor rods. In Chernobyl, there was a threat, Liz Peek, that it would wipe out Europe. So this is a serious issue that he's now not one but two nuclear power plants he's gone after. And they're saying they may go after more. What do you say, Liz Peek?
Well, look, I think that Putin is not just trying to threaten the citizens of Ukraine, Liz. He's holding the entire Western world captive. He knows that we're scared. We're scared that he's raised his nuclear forces to a higher level of alert status. We're scared that he's going after these power plants. And I think it's time. I know this sounds bellicose, and I don't want to get into a war with Russia, but at some point, NATO has to basically show we're not afraid of Putin, that we're going to have to stand up to him and push back. Right now, the Biden administration is sort of tiptoeing around. Are we giving them fighter jets? Aren't we giving them? Let's not make Putin mad. Putin is already mad. He's also dangerous, and he's a criminal. So I think at some point we call the bluff, Liz. I don't know how to do it, whether it's a massive cyber attack on their institutions or how we go about it. But at some point, we cannot let a nuclear-armed madman basically dictate the future of Western Europe, and that is what we're doing.
Americans are scared, Liz. Stay on this about the new white-hot read on inflation, Liz. So now it's Putin's price hike. What do you think of that, Liz?
I think it's so unbelievably dishonest. Obviously, almost all of this came about before the war in Ukraine, before oil prices even went up. In response to that, Liz, if gasoline prices are up $1.75, $1 of that has been on Biden. And by the way, this is not all energy, as you well know. It's food, it's rents. It's basically a Federal Reserve that got way behind in terms of coping with this inflation. I think it's been extremely politicized. I'm very disappointed, I guess I would say, in Jay Powell that he did not more aggressively move on this. We can talk about labor shortages, the fact that the Fed is still buying mortgage-backed securities and driving up home prices and rents. I mean, I just think they've been really on the wrong foot, and now we're all going to be paying for it.
You know, General, you know, to Liz's point, I mean, we see the top spin and the rebranding coming out of the White House. Let's listen, General, I'd like you to listen to what happened with the White House press secretary today. Watch this.
The president's statement blames the Putin price hike. Are you guys just going to start blaming Putin for everything until the midterms?
Well, we've seen the price of gas go up at least 75 cents since President Putin lined up troops on the border of Ukraine.
And last month, the statement didn't mention the Putin price hike. It mentioned inflation because of the pandemic. Why is that?
Well, Peter, last 2 years, there was a global pandemic. Obviously, global events impact the economy, the global economy, as well as global inflation. And the price hikes as a result that have escalated over the course of time of President Putin's further invasion of the impact on the global oil markets are, of course, having an impact.
General, what's your reaction?
Well, I guess my first reaction, candidly, Liz, is if you don't have a good answer, you don't have a solution, obfuscate or try to redirect to something else. She is so wrong. Look, I grew up in the oil business. I was in college, I worked for my dad's firm, which was an oil drilling firm in California. I was a roughneck, a field hand, and I saw the oil drilling and the oil production business firsthand. Everything she has said about it is dead wrong, and I'm just stunned that nobody's really called her out on it. Fortunately, you know, Fox has called her out pretty heavily on it, but others should as well. This is not a Putin price hike. This is a Biden price hike.
Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg, Liz Peek, thank you so much for your time. It's good to see you.